I deeply care for my wife, and while she was away on a work trip, I came up with an idea to surprise her by flying to her location with our kids. However, I quickly realized that sometimes surprises are only enjoyable for one person. The thought hit me suddenly during breakfast. Lily was poking at her cereal, and Jake was already absorbed in his phone, his mind clearly elsewhere. Emily had been gone for 3 days, with another 4 to go, making the total 7 days. Way too long. "What if we went to see Mom?" I suggested, setting down my coffee. Lily's eyes widened. "Just show up?" she asked. "Yeah, we can book flights today and be there tonight." Imagine her reaction. Jake finally looked up. "That'd be kinda cool," he said, which coming from a 13-year-old meant he was actually excited. I seized on that enthusiasm, and within hours we were packed, tickets booked, and excitement buzzing in the air like static electricity. I could already picture it, Emily opening her hotel room door, gasping in surprise, and pulling us all into a big hug, maybe even shedding a few tears. We hadn't had a moment like that in years. But something small nagged at me. Emily hadn't answered when I called her earlier. It wasn't unusual, so I sent her a text. "Hey, hope work's going well. Just wanted to hear your voice." No response. An hour later, I texted again. "Kids miss you. Call when you can." Still nothing. A little odd, but work trips could get chaotic, so I brushed it off. We arrived in Chicago that evening, and the city's energy was thick with honking horns, flashing lights, and the sharp scent of downtown streets. The kids were hyped up. I rented a car, loaded them in, and plugged the hotel address into the GPS. As I drove, my heart rate picked up. I had promised myself I wouldn't call Emily before we arrived. I wanted it to be a complete surprise. But now, something inside me felt off, like an itch I couldn't scratch. I dialed her number. No answer. I glanced at the clock. 9:43 p.m. Not too late. Maybe she was busy or had gone to bed early. I tried again, just 5 minutes from the hotel. Straight to voicemail. That itch was now a clawing feeling. Jake and Lily were still laughing in the back seat, unaware of the tension that had taken hold of me. When we finally reached the hotel, my heart was racing for no clear reason. I told the kids to wait in the lobby while I went to get the room keys. "We're going to surprise her, right?" Lily asked, bouncing on her toes. "Yeah," I said, but my voice was tight. I walked up to the check-in desk and forced a smile. "My wife is staying here, Emily Carter. I want to surprise her. Could you tell me her room number?" The receptionist smiled politely. "Sorry, sir, we can't disclose guest room numbers." "Of course," I said, sliding my credit card across the counter. "Could you at least call her and let her know I'm here?" She nodded and picked up the phone. I watched her dial, then noticed her expression change. "She's not answering," she said, her eyes flickering to me. My stomach twisted. "Maybe she's asleep," I offered, though I wasn't sure I believed that. The receptionist hesitated, then glanced at her screen. "It shows she checked in with a +1. My mind stopped. "What?" I asked, my voice sounding distant, as if I wasn't really there. "Yeah, the room is under her name, but it says there's an additional guest," she explained, looking at me like she thought I already knew. I just stared at her, and then I started to laugh. Just laughed. Because what else could I do when I realized that the woman I had flown across the country to surprise had booked a romantic hotel stay with someone else? The receptionist looked nervous at my laugh, and I wasn't even angry yet. I was still in that strange place right before everything explodes, where everything feels unnervingly quiet inside your head. "Who's the +1?" I asked, my voice eerily steady. She hesitated. "I can't share that information," she said. I exhaled slowly, forcing calm. "Right. Okay. I need a room." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. I could tell she knew exactly what kind of situation this was. A minute later, I had a room key in hand, on the same floor as Emily's, just a few doors down. Perfect. I walked back to the lobby, forcing a neutral expression. "We're all set," I said, plastering on a smile. "Let's go drop our stuff off." Lily practically skipped next to me. "Can we see Mommy right away?" she asked. "Soon," I promised. We rode the elevator up. Jake was glued to his phone. Lily hummed some cartoon-themed song. They had no idea. The room was nice, clean, unremarkable. But I barely noticed it. I told the kids to get comfortable and order whatever they wanted from room service, then stepped into the hallway. Emily's room was 4 doors down. I walked slowly toward it, my heart pounding in my chest. What was I about to find? A work friend crashing in her room. An innocent explanation? Or something else? I reached her door, room 814, and stood there for a second before knocking. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I knew she was in there. I could feel it. I pulled out my phone and texted her. "Hey, I'm at your hotel. Open the door." No reply. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Without thinking any further, I turned on my heel and marched back downstairs. The receptionist looked surprised to see me again. "Hey," I said, sliding my room key across the counter. "I locked myself out. Can I get a new key?" She nodded and started typing. Then, casually, I added, "Oh, and could you add my wife's room to my key? We always do that when she travels. You know, just in case." I smiled, trying to seem like a man who wasn't about to tear apart his marriage. She hesitated, then beeped my card, swiped it, tapped a few more keys, and handed it back. "All set," she said. "Thanks," I replied, and then I headed back upstairs to confirm it for myself. My feet felt numb as I walked toward Emily's room. The key card was burning a hole in my palm. My pulse wasn't just pounding anymore. It was roaring in my ears, like a primal instinct was warning me. This was it. I reached room 814, exhaled slowly, and inserted the key. Beep! The light turned green. I turned the handle and opened the door. The first thing I noticed was the smell, a mix of cologne, sweat, and something I couldn't even name yet. It wasn't a smell that belonged in a room where my wife was supposed to be alone. The room was dimly lit, just the bedside lamp on. And there, tangled up in the white hotel sheets, was Emily. And some guy I didn't even recognize at first. I was too focused on her. My wife, the mother of my children, lying there, barely covered by a sheet. When our eyes met, for a split second, I saw something terrifying in them. Not guilt, not shame. Just annoyance. Like I was the problem. Like my presence was an inconvenience. Then, in an instant, her face changed. She gasped, scrambling upright, pulling the sheet around her like that would make a difference. "Jason," she stammered, eyes wide. The man next to her stirred, still groggy, unaware of what was happening. I stepped into the room and closed the door behind me. "Who's he?" My voice was eerily calm. Emily looked between me and him, clearly calculating her next move. Then she said something that took me by surprise. "Jason, this isn't what it looks like." I couldn't help but laugh, a harsh, humorless laugh that made the guy in the bed finally wake up. He blinked up at me, confused, then his face drained of color. "Good." I turned my gaze back to my wife. "Really?" I asked, still too calm. "Because it looks like you're naked in a hotel bed with another man." She swallowed hard. I can explain." I crossed my arms. "Then explain." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then she sighed, rubbing her temples like I was giving her a headache. "Jason, you're overreacting," she said, her voice suddenly firm. "It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I felt something snap in my chest. The guy in the bed, who finally had enough sense to start pulling on his pants, cleared his throat. Maybe I should—" "Sit the fuck down," I growled. Emily rolled her eyes. "Typical," she muttered under her breath. "You always blow things out of proportion." I stared at her, speechless. "Emily," I said slowly, "I flew here with our kids to surprise you. Lily and Jake are down the hall, thinking their mom is on a work trip." She flinched at that, just for a moment, before her expression hardened again. Jason, you don't understand. No, I replied. I think I understand perfectly. Silence hung between us, and then, finally, the guy spoke up. Look, man, he said, holding his hands up. I had no idea she was married. Emily whipped around to him. Ryan, shut up, she snapped, but it was too late. I smiled, slow and cold. So, Ryan, I said, you thought she was single? Ryan swallowed nervously. Yeah, I mean, she never mentioned a husband or kids. Emily's face went pale. I turned back to her, my jaw tightening. Wow, not even a mention of us, huh? She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. You know what, Emily? I said, my voice dropping to something dangerously quiet. You're right, I don't understand. I took a step closer. So, why don't you enlighten me? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time since entering the room, she looked trapped. Her eyes flickered to Ryan, then back to me, then to the floor, as if trying to rewrite reality in her favor. I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel it, to sit in the mess she had made. Finally, she spoke. Jason, please, she whispered. It's not what you think. I let out a quiet, dangerous laugh. Oh, because I think my wife is having a full affair in a hotel room while I'm raising our kids back home. And that seems about right to me. Her lips trembled, but then she did something that nearly broke me. She softened her voice, tilted her head slightly, and reached for me, as if I was the one being unreasonable. Jason, I made a mistake, she said, her fingers brushing my wrist. But it's not what you think. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Emily, I should probably go. Shut up, Ryan, she snapped, her head whipping toward him so fast that even I flinched. I watched the way her body tensed, the way she gritted her teeth. She wasn't ashamed. She was angry that she got caught. I took a step back, shaking my head. You know what? Just tell me the truth, Emily, for once. How long has this been going on? She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Ryan exhaled sharply and ran a hand through his hair. Oh, fuck chubby me, he muttered under his breath. That long, huh? I said, watching her closely. She snapped. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? I repeated, my voice hollow. Emily groaned, running a hand through her hair, like I was the frustrating one. Jason, you're a great dad, okay? You're a great husband. You work hard, but I needed... She stopped herself, squeezing her eyes shut. I took a slow, deliberate step forward. Say it. She didn't, so I did. You needed something else. She winced but didn't deny it. I sucked in a deep breath, trying to control the fire climbing up my throat. Emily, our kids are literally down the hall right now. Lily was so excited to see you. You were just going to come home, kiss our kids goodnight, and climb into our bed like nothing happened. She flinched, and then, like some demon had possessed her, she lifted her chin and said the worst thing she could have possibly said. You should have told me you were coming, Jason. The room tilted. Ryan muttered something under his breath as he grabbed his bag. Yeah, I'm out, he said, bolting for the door like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. I didn't even look at him, because my entire world had just shifted on its axis. Are you... My voice cracked. I swallowed hard. Are you saying this is my fault? She crossed her arms, her face unreadable. I'm saying if you had told me, this wouldn't have happened. Something inside me snapped. I took a slow, shuddering breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Emily, this didn't happen because I showed up. This happened because you made a choice. She scoffed. Oh, please, like you haven't been emotionally checked out for years. That hit me hard. I took a step back. What the hell are you talking about? She rolled her eyes. Jason, don't act like you're perfect, she said, as though we were discussing something as minor as forgetting to take out the trash. You barely even look at me anymore. You're always working, always with the kids, and I... She exhaled sharply. I just needed to feel like a woman again. I stared at her, waiting for regret, for the realization to sink in. But she just stood there, her face set in stone, like I was supposed to accept this, like I was supposed to understand. And that's when I knew there was nothing left to save. Something inside me shattered. Not in an explosive way, but in a way that left me eerily calm. The kind of break that turned my soul to ice. I stared at my wife, the woman I had built a life with, raised children with, and I realized she wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was bored. I let out a breath, slow and steady, like I was grounding myself before stepping into a fight I knew I was about to win. "Okay," I said. Emily blinked. "Okay?" "What?" "Okay," I repeated, tilting my head. "I get it now." She shifted her weight, crossing her arms tighter over herself. "Jason, don't do this. Dramatic." "You're not in love with me anymore," I interrupted. Her lips parted. I took a slow step forward. "You haven't been in love with me for a long time, have you?" Emily's jaw tightened. "That's not... Just answer the damn question." She hesitated, then shrugged, so casually it made my skin crawl. "I don't know." I laughed. Actually laughed, because what else was there to do? "Wow," I said, running a hand down my face. "You don't know?" Her expression turned annoyed again, like I was dragging this out for too long. "Jason, I didn't plan for this to happen," she said, like that made it better. It felt good to be wanted." I stared at her. "You think I don't want you?" She rolled her eyes. "Not in the same way. Not like before." "You mean," I said, "not like a stranger in a hotel bed?" She flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair?" My voice thundered through the room. "Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. Is this situation not fair to you? Is this hard for you?" She had the nerve to look away. "You want to feel like a woman again?" I scoffed. "Try feeling like a husband who just found out his wife has been sneaking off to hotel rooms with random men while his kids beg for her attention back home." She let out a slow breath, pressing her fingers to her temples like I was giving her a headache. And that's when I knew she wasn't listening. She wasn't processing. She was just waiting for me to shut up. I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who used to cry during sad movies, who used to leave little notes in my lunchbox before work, who used to laugh so hard she couldn't breathe when Jake would tell his dumb little jokes at dinner. She wasn't that person anymore. Or maybe she was, and I just wasn't worth it to her anymore. Either way, I was done. I turned toward the door. Emily stiffened. "Where are you going?" I paused, glancing over my shoulder. "To our kids," I said. "The ones you apparently forgot existed while you were busy feeling like a woman again." Her face twisted in something ugly. "Don't be dramatic, Jason." I laughed under my breath. "You haven't seen dramatic yet." Then I walked out the door and left her there, standing in the wreckage of everything she destroyed. I walked down the hotel hallway, my legs moving like they weren't even mine. My body felt heavy, like someone had tied bricks to my shoulders. But my mind screamed at me to keep going, because just down the hall, in room 810, my kids were waiting. Lily was probably sitting cross-legged on the bed, giggling at some cartoon, still bouncing with excitement over the surprise we had planned. Jake was probably halfway through a burger from room service, already texting his friends about how Chicago was actually kind of cool. They had no idea. No idea that their mother had just torn our family in half in a dimly lit hotel room with some guy named Ryan. No idea that the dad who walked out that door wasn't the same man anymore. I stopped in front of the door to room 810, just 4 doors away. Their mother was probably still sitting in bed, running her hands through her hair, annoyed at me. Not guilty, not heartbroken, just annoyed. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. Then I swiped the keycard. Beep. The green light blinked. The door opened, and I barely had time to step inside before Lily came flying at me. "Daddy, did you see her?" she squealed, hugging my waist. Was she so happy? Did she cry? The lump in my throat nearly choked me. I forced a smile, swallowing the bile in my throat. "Not yet, baby. I murmured, running a hand through her soft curls. She was busy. We'll see her in the morning, okay? Her little face scrunched in confusion. Oh, okay. She was so trusting, so pure, that she just nodded and let it go. Jake was lying on his bed, one arm behind his head, half watching TV. So, what's the plan? He asked, popping a fry into his mouth. My mind blanked. Plan? There was no plan anymore. I was standing in this room, pretending everything was fine, while their mother was probably scrambling for excuses just 4 doors away. I had to get them out of here. You guys want to do something fun? I said suddenly, forcing my voice into something light, normal. I don't know. Get some ice cream? Walk around the city a little before bed? Lily gasped, like I just told her she won the lottery. Yes. Jake raised an eyebrow but shrugged. Yeah, sure, why not? Cool, I said. I grabbed my wallet, stuffed it into my jacket, and we headed out. Lily scrambled for her shoes. Jake pocketed his phone. I took one last look around the room, the place I had thought was just a fun family trip an hour ago, before stepping out, making sure to leave everything behind because we weren't coming back. We stepped out of the hotel, and the night air hit me like a shock to the system. Crisply cool, real. I needed that because nothing else felt real anymore. Lily grabbed my hand, swinging our arms as we walked down the busy Chicago sidewalk. Jake stuffed his hands into his hoodie pocket, earbuds dangling around his neck, glancing around like he was actually enjoying this. And me? I was just trying to breathe, trying to ignore the weight of the phone in my pocket, waiting for the inevitable call or text from her, trying to push down the rage sitting in my gut like burning coals, trying to act normal because they couldn't know. Not yet. Can I get 2 scoops? Lily asked, practically skipping beside me. I forced a smile. You can get 3. Her whole face lit up. Best night ever. Jake snorted. Dad's in a good mood. We should take advantage before he realizes we're out past bedtime. They had no idea. We found a small ice cream shop, neon lights glowing against the dark streets. The smell of waffle cones and sugar hit me like a memory from a lifetime ago, when things were simple, when a surprise trip meant happiness, not disaster. We ordered. Lily got rainbow sprinkles. Jake got chocolate fudge. I got something I couldn't even name. I just needed to keep moving, keep the night from collapsing in on itself. We sat at a little table by the window, and for a while, it almost felt normal. Lily talked about school. Jake made fun of the way she still colored outside the lines. I nodded, laughed when I was supposed to, took bites of my ice cream, but none of it felt real. I could barely think straight, but then my phone buzzed. I knew who it was, before I even looked at the screen. My stomach twisted as I pulled it out. One new message. Emily. Jason, where are you? I just stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before I turned the phone off and slid it back into my pocket. She didn't get to ask that, not after everything she did. Hey, Dad. Jake's voice pulled me back to the moment. I looked up at him. He narrowed his eyes, clearly too smart for his own good. You okay? I hesitated for a second before offering him a real smile. Yeah, buddy, I said, glancing between him and Lily. I'm perfect. Because for the first time all night, I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about us, and how I was going to get my kids away from this mess before it touched them. By the time we got back to the hotel, I had made up my mind. We weren't staying. I didn't care that our luggage was still in the room. I didn't care that we had technically booked the trip for 2 more nights. I was getting my kids out of this before it could touch them. All right, guys, I said, trying to keep my voice casual as we stepped into the elevator. Change of plans. We're heading home tonight. Lily gasped, but we just got here. Jake furrowed his brows. Why? What about Mom? I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. Something came up. Jake stared at me. He wasn't stupid. He knew something was off. But Lily was still too young to notice the cracks in my voice, and I needed to keep it that way. But Daddy, she whined, her lower lip sticking out. We didn't even get to surprise her yet. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I know, baby, but we'll see her when we get home, okay? The elevator dinged and we stepped out, heading toward our room, my mind still focused on getting them out of here. But as soon as we turned the corner, there she was, standing right outside our room, arms crossed, waiting. Lily lit up. "Mommy!" She ran toward her, but I caught her by the shoulders before she could reach her. "Go inside, Lil," I said, my voice steady but firm. "Jake, take her." Jake hesitated, glancing between me and Emily. He knew something was wrong, but finally he nodded. "Come on, Lil." She pouted but followed him inside, the door shutting behind them. And just like that, it was just the two of us. Emily let out a sharp exhale. "What the hell, Jason?" I stayed silent, watching her. She looked disheveled, her hair messy and sharp, like she had been pacing ever since I left her in that room with Ryan. "Good," she scoffed. "Oh, so now you're not talking? That's real mature." I clenched my jaw. "What do you want, Emily?" She threw her arms up. "I want to talk. You stormed out like a lunatic, took our kids, and disappeared. Do you have any idea how that looks?" I laughed, a quiet, bitter sound. "Oh, I'm sorry. Does it look bad for you, Emily? Does it look like maybe you're a terrible wife and mother?" She twisted her face. "Jason, lower your voice." I stepped closer, towering over her. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore." She flinched. For the first time, real fear flashed in her eyes. Good. She should be afraid, not of me hurting her, but of what was coming next. Because I wasn't just mad, I was done. "Jason," she tried again, softer this time. "Please, let's go inside and talk." I shook my head. "There's nothing to talk about." "Yes, there is," she said, her voice cracking. "This is our family, Jason." I let the silence stretch, wanting her to squirm in it, then finally said the words I knew would break her. "You should have thought about that before you got into bed with another man." Her face crumbled for the first time that night. For the first time, she looked like she actually felt the weight of what she had done. But it was too late. I pulled my room key from my pocket, opened the door, and stepped inside. Before I shut it, I turned back to her one last time. "I'll be filing for divorce when we get home." Then, I closed the door in her face. The moment the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands were shaking, my jaw was so tight it ached, but my mind was clear. This was happening. I was done, and there was no coming back from it. "Who was that?" Lily asked from the bed, her little legs swinging over the edge. I turned, forcing a smile. "Just someone from the hotel, baby. Jake didn't buy it." He was sitting against the headboard, arms crossed, watching me. "Was it Mom?" he asked flatly. I hesitated. Lying to Lily was one thing. She was too young to understand any of this. But Jake, he saw too much. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. "Yeah." His expression didn't change. "You guys fought?" "It wasn't a question." I exhaled. "We just had a talk." He stared at me for a long second before quietly saying, "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" It felt like a punch to the ribs. Lily froze, her big innocent eyes darting between us. "Wait, what?" "Damn it, Jake," I muttered, crouching in front of them and choosing my words carefully. "Listen," I said softly. "Mom and I are working through some things, but no matter what happens, we both love you." "You okay?" I asked. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "But I don't want you to break up." My heart shattered. I pulled her into my arms, hugging her tight. "Oh, baby girl," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. "It's going to be okay. I promise." Over her shoulder, I met Jake's gaze. He wasn't crying, he wasn't yelling, he just looked tired. And in that moment, I knew he already understood. He knew things weren't fixable. He just wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Lily sniffled against my shirt. "Can we just go home now?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yeah, baby, we're going home." Jake nodded. "Good." And just like that, it was decided. We were leaving. I grabbed my phone and booked the earliest flight out. One way, no return. Because we weren't coming back. Not to this hotel, not to this city, not to her. By the time we reached the airport, the weight on my chest had settled into something cold. Heavy, but steady. It was over. No more pretending. No more pushing through the lies. No more waiting for Emily to come home, only to feel like a ghost in my own marriage. The only thing that mattered now was getting my kids out. Lily was half asleep against my side as we sat at the gate, her little fingers still curled around my sleeve like she was afraid I'd disappear. Jake had his hood up, scrolling through his phone, but I could tell he wasn't really looking at anything. He was processing, thinking. I didn't check my phone, not once. I knew Emily was texting, calling, probably spiraling, but she wasn't my problem anymore. Do you think Mom's going to come home after us? Lily mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. I forced my fingers to unclench. I don't know, baby, she yawned, rubbing her eyes. I hope she does. I didn't answer because I couldn't lie to her. Jake, on the other hand, snorted under his breath. She won't? I shot him a warning look, but he just shook his head. She didn't care we were here, Dad. She didn't even ask to see us. His voice was quiet but sharp. She only wanted to talk to you. That says enough. I winced because he was right. Emily hadn't fought to see them. She hadn't called me begging to hug Lily one last time, to apologize to Jake, to explain herself. She had only wanted to control the situation, and when she couldn't, she let them leave without even a goodbye. Lily blinked up at me, confused. Mommy still loves us, though, right? My throat closed up. Of course she does, I murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. She always will, and maybe that was true. Maybe Emily did love them in her own way. But love wasn't enough. Because if it was, we wouldn't be sitting here, waiting for a flight back home without her. The flight was quiet. Lily curled up against my side, her tiny body rising and falling in deep, innocent sleep. Jake had his earbuds in, staring out the window, but I could tell he wasn't listening to anything. He was watching the dark sky stretch out over the clouds. And me? I sat there, staring at the seat in front of me, running through every moment of the last 24 hours like I was watching a movie I never wanted to see again. The way Emily's face twisted in annoyance when I caught her. The way she made me feel like it was my fault. The way she let us leave without even saying goodbye to her kids. I clenched my fists, then forced them to relax. It didn't matter anymore. We were going home. But the problem was, home wasn't home anymore. The moment we stepped off that plane, everything was different. We landed early in the morning, the sky still tinged with gray. As I loaded the kids into the car, the drive back felt too quiet. Like even the world knew something was broken. When we pulled into the driveway, Lily stretched and let out a sleepy yawn. Mom's still at the hotel, right? Jake shot me a look in the rearview mirror, waiting for me to answer. I took a slow breath. Yeah, baby. She nodded, satisfied. Okay, I'm going to make her a card for when she gets home. Jake looked away, didn't say anything. I unlocked the front door, and the moment we stepped inside, the emptiness hit me like a truck. The air was still. Too still, like the house knew Emily wasn't coming back. Lily kicked off her shoes and ran to the living room, already rummaging for crayons. Jake walked in slower, his eyes scanning the space like he was seeing it for the first time. I dropped my bag by the door, exhaling. Then, before I could stop myself, my eyes flicked to the kitchen counter, where Emily's coffee mug still sat from the morning she left. Cold, untouched, a reminder of the life we had before I knew the truth. Jake must have followed my gaze because he scoffed under his breath. Guess you don't have to make her coffee anymore. I swallowed hard. Jake, it's fine, he muttered, walking toward the stairs. I'm just going to go to my room. I let him go because what was I supposed to say? That it wasn't fine? That I wished things were different? That I wished Emily had just been a better liar? I closed my eyes for a second, ran a hand over my face, and sighed. Then I turned to Lily, who was already scribbling furiously on a piece of paper. Daddy, how do you spell love? My throat tightened. I crouched beside her, brushing a curl from her face. Love, baby, I whispered. She grinned, carefully writing each letter in big, uneven handwriting. Lovey. And underneath it she wrote, I love you, Mommy. I had to look away. I couldn't do this right now. Not when my daughter still believed her mother was coming back. Not when I wasn't sure how to tell her the truth. Not when I wasn't even sure what home was supposed to be anymore. The house was quiet, too quiet. Jake was in his room, door shut, probably texting his friends about how his family had just exploded overnight. Lily was still at the kitchen table, tongue sticking out in concentration as she carefully colored in the heart she had drawn next to the word Mom. And me? I was just standing there, staring at my daughter's perfect little handwriting, wondering how the hell I was supposed to tell her that her mother had already walked out of this family long before I caught her in that hotel room. I pulled out my phone. No new messages. Emily had given up. No more texts, no more calls, not even a fake excuse. I don't know why that hit me harder than anything else. I had spent years choosing her, choosing our marriage, choosing our family. And the moment she realized she couldn't talk her way out of this, she stopped choosing us altogether. Daddy? Lily's soft voice snapped me back to reality. I looked down. Her big round eyes blinked up at me, full of trust. When's Mommy coming home? My chest felt like it was caving in. How do you tell a 6-year-old the truth? How do you tell her that the woman who tucked her in at night, who kissed her boo-boos, who promised she would always be there, wasn't coming back? You don't. Not like that. I crouched beside her, brushing a hand over her hair. Mommy's going to be away for a while, baby. She frowned. Why? I swallowed hard. Because grown-ups don't always get things right, and sometimes when they make mistakes, they have to go figure things out on their own. She considered that, her little fingers tracing over the heart she had drawn. But she still loves me, right? My breath hitched. I forced a smile. She'll always love you. It wasn't the full truth, but it was her truth. The one she needed. The one she'd hold on to until she was old enough to understand the real version. She beamed. Okay, then I'll save this for her when she gets back. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Because she didn't know. She didn't know that the card she just made, it would sit on the counter for days, weeks, months. She didn't know that every morning she'd wake up and run downstairs expecting to see her mom drinking coffee at the table. She didn't know that one day she'd stop asking, that one day she'd forget she ever made that card at all. And that was the part that broke me the most. Because no matter how much I hated Emily for what she did, I hated that she could still break our daughter's heart without even being here.